Well, no, the government is obsessed with getting us to more than 80% renewable energy by 2030. But of course, as you know, that's many hundreds of thousands of kilometres of wires. That's $1 trillion worth of cost, according to the far right-wing think tank, the CSIRO. And of course, 20,000 solar panels each and every day for the next multiple years till 2030. But of course, where does it go? Regional Australia. Which bits of regional Australia? Well, it seems that there's a plan for almost every part of it, but guess what? Locals don't like it. Some farmers that have been annoyed with AusNet in Victoria, we've been talking about for a long time, yet amazingly, people still voted Labor and they were returned in and around the seat of Ballarat. But Barnaby, farmers turned up and they want a full-on inquiry here because basically what you've got in the scenario in Victoria is there's a decision made by the Victorian government that this stuff's going to be built, and they've now limited the capacity of locals to campaign or to appeal against this stuff, which means that the big march of the government will be these people will just have to cop it. But this is going to be replicated in every single regional area in Australia.
It is. It is. And look, the perverseness that people think this is a thing of beauty. If I was to stick a wind tower on that thing right there, little big wind tower going around, would you think that was a thing of beauty? Would you think that was a complete sort of abomination on our nation's parliament? Well, they're putting that all over our landscape. And then we've got this network of cobwebs of filth, which is transmission lines, all over our farmland. Paul, I went home the other day. There was a black bag, completely decomposing apparently, with a wooden peg, telling me I was going to have transmission lines over my house.
Wow.
Over my house. That is called negotiations. We have power bills going through the roof. We have reliability going through the floor, and we have the taxpayers' money going overseas to other countries to pay for this fiasco which we've created for ourselves. I am so angry about this. It is outrageous. And I'm saying to your listeners, realise you're the sucker, you sucker, that you're going to pay for people overseas to put your power bill through the roof because of dancing, prancing Minster Bowen.
100%. I mean, Joe, you know, we talked about this, we talk about it every week because it matters. It's going to matter every year between 2030 and beyond. How does this become a more coordinated process? Because in a scenario where, oh, well, look, I'm willing to sell my bit of land and the state government's willing to make this decision here and this decision there. And again, the ultimate thing about how undesirable this stuff is there's no plans for it on North or South Head.
Yeah,
there's no plans for the puppy park.
I wish there was a wind farm in every teal seat in Australia.
Yes.
I promise you that. But look, obviously there has to be a proper process. You can't have these things just foisted on people. There has to be engagement. And you have to make sure that, you know, it's done as far as possible with the wishes or the goodwill or at least the acquiescence of the landowners and the farmers themselves. But again, this is something that happens time and time again. We saw this whole thing with the Lock the Gate campaign with CSG, right? Now, how happy would we be if we had all those gas reserves now that a bunch of NIMBY Greens hoodwinked farmers into opposing? Like, we would have had that. And that is the same. That is just the same principle with a different energy source.
I know a lot about that issue, actually. I was part of it.
Oh, yeah, I know a little bit too. I lived in it.
The thing is, and I lived in it too, people were being done over financially. We had some people, they said, oh, we'll give you a case of beer for a well. And then someone said, oh, well, $240, or $1,500, but don't tell anybody, it's quiet. Some of these wells were doing $60,000 a day. A day.
Yeah.
And someone getting a case of beer. That's, of course, why you had this fractious. And this issue here, they're going to walk straight over the top of the farmers because they're apparently appeasing the great god Gaia in the seat of Wentworth.
Well,
and
as long as you have that's what I'm saying. You have proper consultation and compensation. Then you
get to interrupt Barnaby now.
Well, Joe made the point about I'd like to see something in the teals, and Barnaby just mentioned the teal destination of Wentworth, where a battery for solar power storage has been proposed in Waverley Council and in North Sydney. I think at Cammeray they've proposed the battery, both of which went teal at the last election because climate change is their most important issue. But the very first time anything is suggested in their backyard, a battery the size of a storage container that was going to be hidden at the side of a park, because all of these solar panel loving houses need their solar panel generated energy to be stored when it's dark
On a large proportion of
are
solar panels on roofs.
objecting
Yep.
to the batteries. If the batteries were in Rooty Hill, they'd have no problem. But because the batteries are in their backyard, they're objecting. Their hypocrisy is breathtaking.
Absolutely.
And the fact that we saw in the Senate tonight for the second night running a deliberate tactic by the Labor Party to avoid the vote happening over an inquiry into this exact issue. The Greens and Labor have buddied up together to make sure there's no inquiry to how this is going to impact farmers and rural and regional communities. Hilariously, Sarah Hanson-Young was in the Senate today around 12:30 giving us a lecture about koala habitats around coal mines. The funny thing is, if you look at the pyramid of left-wing wokeness, renewable energy is at the top.
Yeah.
So when we get to koala habitats, whales migration, remember they used to care about the whales? Not so much anymore, because when the offshore wind turbines go in and upset their migration, not so much problem because it's renewable energy. We don't like coal mines that upset koala habitats, but we want to whack out every koala habitat to put a power line through for this new grid. Off we go.